Born in difficult circumstances herself, and owing her own life to the nurses that helped save her, Lucy Letby was born with a desire to help people and save lives. This desire took a dark turn to become a nightmare for the families of the infants entrusted to her care. As Letby embarked on her career as a nurse, her actions veered into the realm of suspicion and fear. What drove her to betray the very oath she took to heal and protect? And how did her journey from a promising young nurse to a suspected serial killer unfold? Our episodes deal with serious and often distressing incidents. If at any time you feel like you need support, please contact your local crisis centre. This episode discusses murder of infants and may be graphic and upsetting. It may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Lucy Letby was born on the 4th of January 1990 in Hereford, Herefordshire, the only child of a finance manager and an accounts clerk. She was educated at Elstone School and Hereford Sixth Form College. She had had a very difficult birth herself and was, according to a friend who knew her since secondary school, very grateful for being alive to the nurses who would have helped save her life. This, the friend states, had led her to want to become a nurse all her life, and that everything she did was geared towards that ultimate goal of becoming a nurse. Letby pursued her education in nursing at the University of Chester, where she also worked as a student nurse during her 3 years of training, carrying out placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital and the Countess of Chester Hospital. Letby was the first member of her family to study at university and graduated in September 2011. Letby began working as a registered nurse at the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital in 2012. In a 2013 staff profile, she said that she was responsible for caring for a wide range of babies requiring various levels of support, and that she enjoyed seeing them progress and supporting their families. Letby also took part in a campaign to raise funds for a new neonatal unit at the hospital. Letby had 2 training placements at Liverpool Women's Hospital in late 2012 and early 2015. Which came under investigation after her conviction. In June 2016, consultants asked management to remove her from clinical duties pending an investigation into her conduct. She had previously been moved from night to day shifts in April 2016 by the unit's ward manager. Letby was transferred to the patient experience team in July 2016 and later to the Risk and Patient Safety Office, working there until her arrest in 2018. Letby qualified to work with the infants who needed intensive care in 2015, the same year the suspicious incidents began. Letby had told others that she found non-intensive care work boring. When she was moved to day shifts, the suspicious incidents notably moved from occurring overnight to happening in the daytime when Letby was working. The first suspicious case occurred on the 8th of June 2015. At 8 p.m, a healthy baby boy, a twin, was being cared for in Nursery 1 on the ward, and the designated nurse was Letby. The boy had been handed over to Letby after she started her night shift, with the paediatric registrar having clocked off when Letby was 30 minutes into her shift. 26 minutes later, she called a doctor with the baby's state rapidly deteriorating. The baby died half an hour later, less than 90 minutes into Letby's shift. The paediatric registrar later testified that when she heard about the death of the child the next day after returning to work, that it was a big surprise and completely out of the blue. The baby boy had showed no signs of any problems throughout the day. He was handling well, and doctors had no concerns at all for him or his twin sister. A fellow nurse said that when the baby started deteriorating, she saw Letby standing over the infant's incubator and originally did not intervene. However, the nurse then did when she realised he was not recovering under Letby's care. Doctors attending the scene said that child A developed an unusual blue and white mottling on his skin after collapsing, which they said they had never seen before. This symptom later occurred in other babies that were believed to have been intentionally injected with air. The day after child A's death, Letby searched for his parents on Facebook. About 28 hours after child A's death, his twin sister, child B, also collapsed and had to be resuscitated. After child A's death, the parents had spent the day with child B in the nursery with her, but were persuaded to go and rest before the baby's sudden crash. Tests later showed loops of gas-filled bowel in the child. As a result, it was later concluded that the baby had been injected with air. Letby had fed the baby 25 minutes before their collapse, and the child had the same unusual rash on her skin as first seen on child A hours earlier, indicating that they had also been injected with air. A few days later, child C, a boy in good condition, also died. He suddenly collapsed as soon as another nurse left the nursery. Despite not being the designated nurse for the child, Letby was witnessed standing over his monitor as his alarm sounded when the other nurse came back in. Letby's shift leader had already told her to focus on her designated patient, and the shift leader later testified that she had to keep pulling her away from the family room as child C died. His parents later recalled that a nurse that they believed was Letby brought a ventilator in and said even though their child was not yet dead, "You've said your goodbyes, do you want me to put him in here?" On the 22nd of June 2015, baby girl child D collapsed 3 times in the early hours and died. Those who attempted to save the child noticed the girl's skin had been discoloured. A post-mortem X-ray showed a striking line of gas in front of the spine, consistent with air being injected into the bloodstream. A doctor later testified that such a finding could not be explained by natural causes. The mother had noted Letby hovering around the family hours before the baby collapsed. An informal review conducted in June 2015 by a consultant and lead neonatologist at the Countess of Chester Hospital NHS Foundation Trust revealed troubling details regarding 4 unexplained collapses that occurred in the same unit. 3 of these cases resulted in deaths in the same month. It was observed that Letby had been on shift on each occasion. The unit's consultants promptly reported these deaths to the Trust Committee responsible for addressing serious incidents. The committee classified the deaths as medication errors. Had they been classified as serious incidents involving unexpected deaths, an immediate investigation could have taken place if they were grouped together. The numbers of unexplained collapses were particularly abnormal. There had previously been only 2 or 3 deaths a year in the neonatal unit. What was also particularly unusual was that the babies did not respond to resuscitation attempts as they would be expected to. Usually babies that had got a heartbeat back would see an improvement in their breathing, but that did not happen in these cases. Detective Superintendent Paul Hughes, who later led the investigation, was told by 2 medical consultants that baby collapses which occurred during the spike had been unexpected and could not be explained, both of which were not usual with infant collapses in general. On the 2nd of July, a doctor raised his concerns over the sudden collapses and deaths. No action was taken against Letby. At about 9 p.m. on the 3rd of August, the mother of child E, who had come to the neonatal unit to give him and twin child F her express breast milk, rushed into the room of child E, having been alarmed by a scream. She found the child having fresh blood around the mouth and being in extreme distress. Letby, who was standing near to his incubator, was described by the mother as not doing anything in the face of the apparent emergency. The mother would recount seeing Letby then as someone who wants to look busy, but they're not actually doing anything. Letby said that the bleeding had merely been from a rubbing feeding tube and asked the mother to calm down. The boy died in the early hours of the 4th of August after having lost about a quarter of his blood. A striking amount, according to a blood specialist testifying at court, who agreed with the defence that her observations did not help establish a cause of death. Injection of air was another suspected reason for the death. Flecks of blood were found in his vomit, but no post-mortem was carried out. The next evening, Child E's twin brother, Child F, was being cared for in Nursery 2, the same room in which Letby was looking after another infant. At 1:54 a.m, Child F suffered an unexpected drop in his blood sugar and saw a surge in his heart rate. The child survived, and a blood test later revealed that he had been given an extremely high amount of exogenous pharmaceutical insulin, which he had never needed. Later at trial, Letby did not contest that the baby had been intentionally injected with insulin, suggested someone else must have done it. Letby searched for the parents of Child E and F on social media in the following weeks and months, and for other parents who were not part of the case. On the 7th of September 2015, Child G, on her 100th day of being alive, collapsed for the first of 3 times in the following 3 weeks. After the first collapse, the baby girl was taken to Arrow Park Hospital, but 5 days later she collapsed again, 15 minutes after Letby had been feeding her. The child survived, but is now severely disabled as a result of what happened to her. The baby was witnessed projectile vomiting so massively that it reached the chair next to the cot and canopy. Her heart rate and oxygen levels also dropped to unusually low levels. Later at trial, an expert witness doctor concluded that the only viable explanation for the baby vomiting so extraordinarily was if she had received far more milk than that allocated down her feeding tube, and that this could not happen accidentally. It was later discovered that Letby had deliberately altered the baby's temperature on her observation chart to make it seem like she was already unwell before she collapsed. Letby also falsified the time of the baby's collapse to make it seem like it coincided with when a colleague gave the baby a milk feed. A nurse noticed when she arrived after Letby's cry for help after one of the baby girl's collapses that the machine connected to the baby to measure its oxygen saturations and heart rate levels had been turned off. The nurse stated in court that 2 doctors had apologised to her for not having the machine switched back on after fitting a cannula to the baby girl. One of the doctors concerned told the court that he did not remember the apology, but considered it possible that it had taken place. He agreed that leaving the monitor switched off was not normal protocol, and possibly a result of him having to rush to another emergency. A colleague had also noticed that Child G's initial collapse occurred on the day she was originally due to be born. About 6 weeks after Child G's multiple collapses, on the 23rd of October 2015, Child I died. This was the 4th time the baby girl had collapsed. On the 4th collapse, Letby was found to be next to her incubator by another nurse. Letby later sent a sympathy card to the baby girl's parents on the day of her funeral, a card which Letby kept photos of on her phone. Letby also wanted to go to the funeral. Twice the baby was found to have excess air in her stomach, which had affected her breathing. Before the second collapse, Letby had said to a colleague that Child I looked pale, even though it would have been hard to see from where they were standing in a doorway looking into the darkened nursery. Then, when the designated nurse for the child turned the light on, she saw the girl was not breathing. The child's mother later said that Letby smiled as she bathed her daughter's body and offered to take photos of the deceased child. A doctor had seen unusual skin mottling on Child I's skin, An X-ray showed the child had a massively enlarged stomach that was consistent with her having been deliberately injected with air. Letby later searched for child I's mother on Facebook. Later, on the 23rd of October, the hospital management was alerted to the concerns of the doctors on the unit. They were told to not make a fuss. Staff reviews were carried out, which highlighted that Letby was always on duty for the suspicious incidents, and in February 2016, a doctor requested an urgent meeting with executives, but no meeting occurred until May 2016. By April 2016, Letby had been moved to day shifts because of the concerns about her. It was not long before the suspicious collapses began occurring in the daytime. On the 9th of April 2016, 2 twin brothers suffered sudden collapses within hours of each other. Tests found that child L had insulin levels in his blood at the very top of the scale that the equipment was capable of measuring. Hours later, twin brother child M's heart rate and breathing suddenly dropped and he nearly died. Experts said that child M's heart problems were likely to have been caused by air being injected into his bloodstream. Although he lived, the child suffers from permanent brain damage. It was noted that the collapses of child L and M occurred in almost identical circumstances to child E and F. Both were twins, where one was believed to have been injected with insulin and the other with air. Child F had survived his injection of insulin, and it was noted that child L had been injected with twice the dose of insulin, the suggestion being that Letby had done so to ensure death on this occasion. A meeting about the suspicious cases took place on the 11th of May 2016, but no action was taken. A month later, child N nearly died after suffering trauma to the throat. Doctors saw blood and unusual swelling at the back of his throat upon examination. The baby had been heard randomly screaming, the jury was told. Child N's father said he then saw blood spattered around his son's mouth. The final 2 cases occurred within hours of each other on the 23rd and 24th of June 2016. The 2 children involved were 2 of 3 triplets, and the cases occurred on Letby's first shift back after a holiday in Ibiza. Child O, a perfect healthy baby, was due to be discharged home but suddenly collapsed on the 23rd of June. When the child initially became unwell, another nurse suggested he be moved to Nursery 1, where the sickest children were treated, but Letby disagreed and the baby subsequently collapsed less than 2 hours later. He recovered but suffered 2 further collapses and died almost exactly 3 hours later. The lead consultant noted that the child should have responded better to resuscitation. X-rays on a post-mortem showed he had an abnormal amount of gas in his body and liver damage that an independent pathologist later ruled had resulted from an impact injury, similar to what would be seen in a car crash. 13 minutes after child O's death, Letby was feeding his triplet brother, child P, who was also expected to be able to go home, but he collapsed after his diaphragm was somehow shattered. Doctors believed he would make a full recovery. As they prepared him to go to another hospital, Letby said, "He's not leaving here alive, is he?" The boy soon died. X-rays likewise showed an inexplicable amount of gas inside the baby. These deaths have been described as exceptional and the tipping point when the consultants realised that drastic action needed to be taken. A consultant allowed the surviving triplet to be taken to a different hospital by medics who had turned up to take child P. A consultant said she allowed this after her parents begged for it, as she now felt Letby was a mortal danger to the surviving triplet. Before the second triplet died, Letby had texted a doctor saying that she would be watching them both, child P and the surviving triplet, like a hawk, and said, "I'm okay, just don't really want to be here, hoping I may get the new admissions." Towards the end of June 2016, Letby was removed from the neonatal ward and instead moved to a clerical role within the hospital when the suspicious collapses suddenly stopped. On the 3rd of July 2018, Letby was arrested by police on suspicion of 8 counts of murder and 6 counts of attempted murder following a year-long investigation. Letby's home at Chester was searched by police following her arrest. After Letby's arrest, the investigation was widened to include Liverpool Women's Hospital, another location at which Letby had worked. Police have begun looking into Letby's entire career, including at Liverpool Women's Hospital, since her conviction. Letby was bailed on the 6th of July 2018 as the police continued their inquiries. She was re-arrested on the 10th of June 2019 on suspicion of 8 cases of murder and 9 cases of attempted murder, and released on bail on the 13th of June. There were thousands of exhibits in the investigation, 16,571 of which were not used as evidence, and some of the items were themselves thousands of pages long. The 2019 arrest and bailing had been made as by this time 3 further cases of attempted murder had been identified, which investigators needed to question Letby further on, and as Letby had been found to have written extensively about the case on her 2018 arrest. Detectives wished to see whether she had written anything further in the year while she was under investigation. On the 13th of March 2020, Letby was placed on an interim suspension by the Nursing and Midwifery Council. On the 11th of November 2020, Letby was formally charged with 8 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder. She was denied bail and remanded in police custody. The Crown Prosecution Service were convinced to approve all of the charges Cheshire Constabulary requested against Letby after it reviewed the evidence the force had collected against her. Letby denied all charges against her and pointed to issues of hospital hygiene and staffing levels. Letby's trial began at Manchester Crown Court on the 10th of October 2022. She pleaded not guilty to 7 counts of murder and 15 counts of attempted murder. Letby's parents and the families of the victims attended the trial. The child victims were referred to as Child A to Child Q. The press secrecy around the identities of the 17 babies and 9 colleagues who gave evidence was rarely seen outside proceedings involving matters of national security. 2 years before the criminal trial, Mrs. Justice Stein banned the identification of the living victims until their 18th birthdays. Parents wanted their identifying information to be protected, though Stein ruled that one parent's profession as a physician was relevant because of his medical expertise and that it would not make that parent identifiable to the public. Several witnesses requested anonymity, including a doctor with whom Letby was said to be infatuated. The judge approved these requests, ruling that getting testimony from the colleagues was more important than them being publicly identifiable. The prosecutor said that Letby was a constant, malevolent presence in the hospital's neonatal unit. There were witnesses that had apparently walked in during or just after Letby's attacks. A mother of one of the victims said she had walked in on Letby trying to kill her baby, with Letby saying, "Trust me, I'm a nurse," when interrupted. Another mother had walked in hearing her baby screaming, to find her child had blood around his mouth, with Letby in the room. Letby told the mother to go back to the ward. The baby's condition soon worsened, and it later died in its parents' arms. The senior medical consultant, who had not recommended a post-mortem examination at the time, said later in court that she regretted her decision, which she said she had taken with a view to avoiding any further distress to the parents, who had expressed they were not keen to have a post-mortem carried out. Afterwards, Letby bathed the deceased baby in front of her parents. Another mother of a baby, who had died in October 2015, recounted an uncomfortable experience of Letby bathing her child. Recounting, she said, "Lucy Letby and another nurse asked me if I wanted to bathe my baby. While we were bathing her, Lucy came back in. She was smiling and kept going on about how she was present at the first bath and how our daughter had loved it. I wished that she would just stop talking." Letby's apparent obsession with this baby and her family later continued. She sent a sympathy card to the parents after the baby's death on the day of its funeral. Upon Letby's arrest, it was found on her phone that she had photographed the card before she sent it and had still kept pictures of it. In a text message sent to a friend on the 9th of April 2016, 2 hours after the collapse of child M, Letby wrote, "Work has been shit, but I have just won £135 on Grand National." She then wrote in a group chat after winning the bet, "Unpacking party sounds good to me with my flavoured vodka." On the afternoon of the 22nd of June 2016, following a holiday in Ibiza, she texted a friend, "Probably be back in with a bang, LOL." Child O died the next day. The texts were seen as important by the Crown Prosecution Service, as it saw them, in some instances, as appearing to be similar to a live blogging of events. Letby had also told a colleague that taking child A to the mortuary was the hardest thing she ever had to do. Letby had also searched for the parents of several infant victims on Facebook, in one case on the anniversary of a baby's death. In total, Letby had searched for 11 of the families affected. When police had asked her why she had searched up the parents of child O on the anniversary of its death, she had responded that she could not explain why she would be doing it. The prosecutor asserted that Letby had injected air into the bloodstream of 2 victims and had used insulin to murder the others. It was also revealed during the trial that Letby had been told more than once not to enter a room where the parents of one of the victims were grieving. Letby had said, "It's always me when it happens." In her defence, Letby's defence lawyer said that she was a dedicated nurse in a system which had failed, that the prosecution's case was driven by the assumption that someone was doing deliberate harm, combined with the coincidence on certain occasions of Miss Letby's presence, and that there had been a massive failure of care in a busy hospital neonatal unit, far too great to blame on one person. The defence also argued that extraordinary bleeding in a baby boy murdered by Letby could have been caused by a rigid wire or tube. The therapeutic use of insulin was denied by Letby's colleagues. No baby on the unit was being prescribed insulin, so there was no reason why any baby should have been given it. The insulin was kept in a locked fridge next to a nurse's station. A key piece of evidence was also given by a consultant who recounted that in February 2016, he had walked in and seen Letby standing over a baby and watching when they seemed to have stopped breathing. Letby was not doing anything despite the baby desaturating. When he asked her what was going on, she responded that he had only just started declining. This baby went on to survive their collapse. By this stage, all 7 of the paediatrician consultants who worked on the neonatal ward agreed that something was seriously wrong in the department. The deaths and near deaths that were happening on the unit could not be medically explained. All the babies involved had been expected to live, and so their deaths came out of the blue. Previously, in the majority of times the premature babies had collapsed, it had already been expected, and in the very rare cases it was not expected, it could still be medically explained, unlike in all of these cases. A paediatrician testified that he and other clinicians had previously raised concerns about Letby, but were told by hospital administration that they should not really be saying such things and not to make a fuss. Although the consultants made their desire to have Letby removed from duties known to hospital staff after the triplet incident, this was refused, and the next day another baby almost died under Letby's care. As well as in the 2 cases in which insulin poisoning had been proved, evidence provided by medical experts indicated that all the babies had been harmed intentionally. This evidence was given by experts specialising in areas of paediatric radiology, paediatric pathology, haematology, paediatric neurology, and paediatric endocrinology, with 2 main medical experts who were consultant paediatricians. Letby was the only staff member on duty for every one of the 25 suspicious incidents. After her removal from duty and the downgrade of the unit to concentrate on lower risk babies, no further incidents were deemed suspicious. It was also discovered that Letby had falsified patient records, covering her tracks by changing the times that some babies collapsed to make sure she could not be placed at the scene. Criminal psychologist Dr. David Holmes stated that the varied methods she used to attack her victims, such as insulin and air injections and overfeeding milk, would all have been specifically chosen as things that would dissipate and not be easily detected afterwards. On the 4th day of the trial, the prosecution presented a handwritten note from Letby which said, "I am evil, I did this," and that she killed them on purpose because she couldn't take care of them. It further stated, "I killed them, and I'll never marry or have children. I'll never know what it's like to have a family." The defence argued that the note was the anguished outpouring of a young woman in fear and despair when she realised the enormity of what's being said about her in the moment to herself, and that Letby had written it when she was dealing with employment issues, including a grievance procedure with the NHS Trust. Several other notes from Letby were shown in court, 2 of which said, "Why, how has this happened? What process has led to this current situation? What allegations have been made and by who? Do they have written evidence to support their comments?" And, "I haven't done anything wrong, and they have no evidence, so why have I had to hide away?" The prosecution said that Letby was expressing through the notes her frustration about not being allowed back to work in the neonatal unit. The police had also discovered that Letby had secretly kept medical documents at home relating to the care of the children. Jurors were told that 257 nursing handover sheets were found at addresses linked to Letby, of which 21 related to babies she had allegedly harmed. Her trial judge stated at sentencing that she had kept documents as morbid records of the dreadful events surrounding the collapses of her victims and what she had done to them. The sensitive documents, which should never have left the hospital, contained the names of the babies, and the documents had been stuffed and hidden away in shopping bags under her bed. One note of medications given to a baby boy who had managed to survive after being on the brink of death, written on a paper towel, was found under Letby's bed. Letby claimed at trial that she had no means of destroying the confidential notes, yet the court heard a paper shredder which could have done so was found in her home. Her diary was also found to be marked with the initials of the baby she killed on the exact days they died. It was within this diary that the note that stated, "I am evil, I did this," was tucked inside. Furthermore, more notes were discovered that contained phrases such as, "I'm sorry that you couldn't have a chance at life," "I don't want to do this anymore," "How can life be this way?" "I hate my life," and "Help" in capital letters. The prosecution said the notes were evidently confessions of guilt, rather than just the words of a woman in distress. These notes and documents had been found in searches of Letby's home in Chester and of her parents' house in Hereford. Letby herself gave evidence to the court in May 2023, breaking down in tears and claiming she was made to feel as though she was incompetent but meant no harm. When asked why she wrote, "I am evil, I did this," Letby said, "I felt at the time that if I'd done something wrong, I must be such an evil, awful person. I'd somehow been incompetent and had done something wrong which had affected those babies." Letby said that the allegations had negatively impacted her mental health, saying, I don't think you can be accused of anything worse than that. I just changed as a person. My mental health deteriorated. I felt isolated from my friends on the unit. From a self-confidence point of view, it made me question everything about myself. It was observed that Letby eventually began to lose her composure in the witness box, asking for a number of unplanned breaks. It was also observed that she only broke down when talking about herself and the impact it had on her, which the prosecution said was telling. She had not shown any emotion in relation to the fate of the babies. It was also noted that she repeatedly contradicted herself, muddled up her story, and became more and more frustrated with the prosecution's questions, which was unlike her usual calm demeanour. Final verdicts were returned by the jury on the 18th of August 2023. Letby was found guilty of 7 counts of murder of 7 babies. She killed them by injecting them with air, overfeeding them, poisoning them with insulin, and assaulting them with medical tools. Letby was also found guilty of 7 counts of attempted murder of 6 infants. Letby was found not guilty on 2 counts of attempted murder. The jury was unable to reach verdicts on 6 further attempted murder charges. Nicholas Johnson, KC, asked the court for 28 days to consider whether a retrial would be sought for these 6 counts. On the 21st of August 2023, Letby was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life order, the most severe sentence possible under English law. She is the 4th woman in UK legal history to receive such a sentence, and is now considered the most prolific serial killer of children in modern British history. Letby opted not to attend the sentencing hearing, and as such heard neither the various victim impact statements which were read out, nor her sentence being passed. In response, Alex Chalk, the Secretary of State for Justice, wrote that the government will look at options to change the law at the earliest opportunity to compel defendants to attend their sentencing. On the 30th of August 2023, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced that the UK government would introduce legislation to Parliament that would compel convicted criminals to attend their sentencing hearings by force if necessary, or face the prospect of more time in prison. After the trial, Lucy Letby was transferred to HMP Low Newton, a closed prison for women in County Durham. As of January 2024, Letby is being held in HMP Bronzefield. At a hearing on the 23rd of September 2023, the CPS confirmed that there would be a retrial on 1 of the 6 counts of attempted murder against Letby, on which the jury at the original trial could not reach a verdict. A date of the 10th of June 2024 has been set, but the trial will not be conducted until after judges have decided whether or not to grant Letby permission to appeal against her existing convictions. Letby was removed from the nursing register on the 12th of December 2023, having informed the Nursery and Midwifery Council that she did not accept guilt but did not contest the removal. In January 2024, a judge refused Letby's permission to appeal her convictions, but as she renewed her application, a court of 3 judges will decide whether to grant permission. During Letby's trial, the prosecution suggested several possible motives for the killings, including boredom, that she got a thrill from the events surrounding the deaths, and that she enjoyed playing God. The prosecution told the jury that she was controlling things, she was enjoying what was going on, she was predicting things that she knew was going to happen. Another possible motivation suggested by the prosecution was that the killings were to gain the attention of a married doctor with whom Letby allegedly had a secret relationship. Following the verdict, it was reported that police were investigating whether Letby harmed other babies. There was a continuing investigation of incidents which detectives had identified as suspicious at the Countess of Chester Hospital, involving around 30 other infants. Neonatologists looked into about 4,000 admissions at the hospital and Liverpool Women's Hospital, where Letby had worked from 2012 to 2015, and were to pass on any cases of unexpected and unexplained deteriorations to police. At least one family was told by police that the birth of their child at the latter hospital was part of the inquiry. Cheshire Police have said that further charges could possibly be brought against Letby as a result of these further investigations. On the 18th of August 2023, Andrea Sutcliffe, Chief Executive and Registrar of the Nursing and Midwifery Council, stated that Letby remains suspended from our register and we will now move forward with our regulatory action seeking to strike her off the register. On the 21st of August 2023, it was announced that the nursing director at the Countess of Chester Hospital, at the time Letby was based there, had been suspended from her job as a senior nursing officer at Northern Care Alliance NHS Foundation Trust with immediate effect because of information that came to light during the trial. The Nursing and Midwifery Council subsequently announced that she would face an investigation into her fitness to practice. She and other executives at the hospital have been accused of ignoring warnings about Letby. On the 4th of October 2023, Cheshire Constabulary announced an investigation into corporate manslaughter at the Countess of Chester Hospital. This investigation is ongoing. Thank you for listening to this episode of Shadow Crimes. If you like this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media and check out our website at shadowcrimes.com, where mysteries thrive and shadows speak.